Alright guys, this is X299 again. Today I'm going to be taking one of these PS3 controllers apart. Now I have replaced the batteries in these PS3 DualShock3 controllers before when they started dying, and I'll show you how to do that in this video. But the main reason I'm taking this controller apart here is we've had it about a year and a half probably, and nothing was really spilt down inside the buttons, but after a while it seems like the wear and tear on these buttons kind of makes them, I don't know if you can hear that, but you hear that squeak, and the buttons are kind of starting to feel, especially the X button right here, little squeak right there in the circle as well, and you can definitely feel that when you're playing like in any game, and it just feels like the button's dry, and it just doesn't feel right. You know, it kind of feels like a squeaky door or something like that. So I'm going to try to see if I can fix that. Here's a new controller that we've just purchased, and you can tell the difference right here just mashing the buttons. Got a nice click, none of that dry squeak like we've noticed here in this blue one. And that's the difference between a blue controller and, you know, one that you've used quite a while. The thumbsticks are pretty good. We might try to just go ahead and clean everything out while we got it apart. But to take these DualShock controllers apart, there's basically 5 screws. And if I turn this around, you'll see that you have, you're going to have 3 screws right here in the top part by where your L2 and R2 buttons, and then down here in the handles you also have 1 in each handle. So we'll need to take a screwdriver and get those. Now these screws are pretty deep in here, so even though they're Phillips, you're not going to be able to use a small screwdriver like this. Even though this is definitely a small enough head on the screwdriver, it's not going to go deep enough to be able to reach these screws down here. So you're going to want something more along the lines of these things that have a nice real skinny shaft. And these kind of screwdriver sets are very inexpensive. You can probably buy one for under $5 for a whole set. You know, definitely check your places like Lowe's and, you know, Home Depot, that kind of place, and you can get those really cheap. And obviously if you go somewhere, a specialty store like Radio Shack, you know, something like this is going to be a lot more expensive. So, you know, go to Home Depot or Lowe's or somewhere like that to get your screwdrivers if you need them. And you just need something with a long, skinny, deep shaft and a Phillips screwdriver to reach those heads. So I'm going to do that now. We'll take this apart, and I've got 3 of my screws out. One thing you'll notice is even some of these screws, even though I've got it loosened up in here, are kind of hard to get out. So, you know, you may have to tap it a little bit, and that one just went out right on the floor. So be careful as well if you have, you know, dark carpet, because these screws are going to be almost impossible to find. So here we go. I found it, and there's still one we're missing somewhere. Let's see, it's up here. Maybe need to loosen it just a little more. Sometimes they're pretty stubborn, little screws in here. Maybe take your screwdriver and kind of wiggle it around once you know it should be loose enough. Maybe just kind of move it side to side. See if that helps. And nope, not yet. The thing you want to make sure you do is you make sure you don't strip your screws out. You know, if you strip your screw head out, you know, you're not gonna be able to ever get them out unless you drill them out or something. So once we have this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead, and once we have all 5 screws out, you should be able to start basically where the handles are and go ahead and loosen it up. You're going to be really careful right here that you don't yank a whole bunch of stuff loose. And once you get this open like this, you're going to want to move it around to the front side, okay? And here you're going to want to make sure there's a crack. You can see the crack here. You're going to want to make sure that you pull it off and kind of pull it forward and up and around your L2 and R2 buttons carefully, kind of like that. Don't know if you can see that in the video, but right here after you get it off, you can kind of see part of the reason that we're starting to get some stickiness and stuff like that. I mean, if we look at the inside of this, we have, you know, my son plays this PS3 all the time, and it looks like we got some like chip crumbs, bread crumbs, who knows what all's in here. Could definitely use a cleaning out. So if that's that dirty, we can imagine what might be, you know, underneath some of this other stuff here. Now here we have another battery that I had put on at one point, a brand new battery that I'd bought on Amazon. It's only like $5 and supposedly gives you about, oh, twice as many hours of gameplay from a charge. So they last a lot longer. They're about $5 and you can replace these batteries right here yourself. Amazon.com is where I bought my batteries. They're like $5.50 a piece and really easy to replace. You just got to take your back cover off, and then there is 2 wires. You got to be really careful in these that you don't break these off. But basically you're going to have a little right here, let me get my screwdriver here. These 2 red and white wires connect to a little attachment, and basically what you want to probably do is get a little flathead screwdriver and basically just pry that out, being really careful that you kind of go one side and then the other until you get it out. And you want to make sure you remember, you know, which side is which when you plug that back in. I think there's only one way it can go in because there's a little notch right here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little notch that has to go that way. So it only goes in one way. And this battery here that I had bought, I think was a little bit bigger than this, these little plastic battery holders here that kind of, you know, regular battery kind of snaps in. So what I had done is just used a little piece of packaging tape on the bottom to kind of hold it in place right there. So you can do whatever, you know, you could also use electric tape, whatever works to make sure that it's not, you know, rattling around free inside here. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up, and this here is your 2 motors that's going to give you your DualShock on your controller. These rotors here are held in by little blue clips there. You'll just take a flathead screwdriver and kind of pry those blue clips off, being careful of course. Same thing over here. It's just looks like a couple of little blue clips holding that in place. You'll want to take those off, and the reason you want to take those off is so that you can take your green circuit board off here and get lower. So we're going to do that. We're going to take our battery off, and then this circuit board looks like it has 1 screw right there holding it in place. So we'll remove that and see if we can clean this puppy up. Okay, now I got the battery connector off, and the way I actually did that was I found my teeniest screwdriver right here that I actually had, teeniest flathead screwdriver, and I actually worked it in from in here and kind of pushed the edge of the white connector that I could see inside there and kind of pushed it out, then worked down here just a little bit, push it out this way a little bit, and push it out this way a little bit. And by working it through these little grooves, I worked it actually out. Now, these things here actually come loose pretty easy, that actually hold on. And rather than trying to take a screwdriver and lift those blue tabs up, what you're actually going to want to do is you'll see 2 little white clips if yours is like this one. And you'll actually want to go ahead and pull those in. Grab both of those and pull those in. And while you're doing that with one hand, you're going to want to take a bigger flathead screwdriver, not huge, but another one, and use your other hand as you're pulling those two white tabs, squeezing them inside. You want to take your other screwdriver and just kind of pop it out as you're squeezing those two white tabs together. And again, those white tabs are right there, and there's one right there. So that's how you'll actually get those loose. It's a little bit tricky, but it's not as actually bad as getting that little battery connector loose, to be honest with you. And that side's loose. Okay. Once you get all that loose, and then you take out the one screw that was holding this thing in place, which I believe was right here, you will you should be able to pull this whole assembly out. And what I said is not coming true. Something's still holding me in here. It's right over here. There we go. Alright. Now if I'm ever able to get this back together, we'll never know, but alright. So this is our start and stop, or start and select buttons right here. Here's our PS button. And those just lift right out. And you got a little rubber mechanism here. And it looks a little bit dirty. We can probably go ahead and clean that. Here. They look completely different. And as you can see right here, I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty dirty. This camera is probably not showing it real well. And then when I get it over the shadow of the camera, it gets in the light. But that is actually our directional pads. And then this here is the rubber mechanism for our buttons. So we'll make sure that this isn't torn. Make sure that there's no holes in it or not too much tear. Probably isn't. I'm sure that if you do need to replace this, if it is ripped, or if you rip it trying to clean this or whatever, I'm sure you can buy these very cheap online. We're going to go ahead and clean this all up and try to start assembling this back together, and get it all put back together. And if your R2 and L2 buttons were starting to get sticky or whatever, this is where those would be, right here. This pop out right here would be your 2 buttons. This would be your L1, and this would be your R1 on the top right here. Kind of looks like Legos, but this is actually a little rubber pad. So basically you're just going to want to take probably isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol, which I have a jar of here, and then some Q-tips to clean this up. And that's really all you should need to be able to clean it up. We'll see if this actually works to make the controller feel more like new again. And if you can see that, just taking a Q-tip to it, this Q-tip is extremely dirty. Just wiping it over this little rubber piece. So, and we're going to go ahead and clean out the inside of that controller and see if I can get all this basic gunk off here. Yeah, I don't know what this blue stuff is, if it's just paint from the inside of the controller coming off or what. But it's cleaning up pretty easy with this rubbing alcohol. As you can see, I got it all over the Q-tip now. And what I like to do is just pour a little bit of my rubbing alcohol inside the very own lid. It's easier than trying to pour it on the end of the Q-tip. Got a fresh Q-tip here that I got. I'm trying to hold the camera and work with the other hand here, so I don't know how well this is going to turn out. But just trying to clean up any, obviously any loose dirt or stickiness. Obviously, if you spill soda in here, you might have some sticky gunk, and isopropyl alcohol should also work to try to clean that up. I'd go ahead and clean both sides while you're at it. And then, while I think I'm at it, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. What I've done is I've pulled my directional pad out and turned it around, and as you can see, I'm glad I did, because look at that. I could definitely use some cleaning up. Oh yeah. Hold this as I work, it might be a little better. One thing you could do, I think what I'll do is actually take these and, you could let them soak in a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, let them soak in some hot water, maybe a little bit of soap on the hot water, and clean it up as well. Especially if you, get something like soda or something in here, I think I would definitely use a little bit of soapy hot water and kind of let them soak for a half hour or so. Okay, guys. You got to be careful when you're messing with this piece right here, because you have a lot of buttons, including the PlayStation button right there, which will fall out on you. It kind of fell out on me when I tried to dump the other buttons out, but I mean, all it takes is just realigning it properly. It only goes one way, so it'll fall out, but basically just put it back in so that the P is right side up, or the PS3 is right side up, and you'll be good. Now these buttons here look like they kind of have notches on them, so they only go in one way. Obviously you'll put them in the proper place when you put them back in. Now what I've done is I went ahead and used my Q-tips, and I've cleaned inside these rings where it was a little bit dirty, inside each of these rings. Pretty much anywhere any of the buttons are going to go up in here. It was a little bit dirty where my R1 and R2 buttons go. Just basically get any dirt out of here. Especially if it's somewhere where there's a button or a stick, try to get all that dirt loose and grime and everything like that. Get it cleaned up. Here I'm also going to want to go ahead, the buttons, they might be starting to stick, because if you look at these buttons on the side of them, see that grime, that little blue stuff right there? You can kind of feel it too, and it doesn't feel exactly smooth. It feels a little bit rough. So we want to take a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol, and get that cleaned up. I wouldn't want to use anything too rough. You don't want to, use sandpaper or anything like that, because then you're going to roughen up your side. You want a smooth surface on here. So just try to get all the grime cleaned off, even if you have to soak them in some sudsy hot water for half hour or whatever. That might do the trick as well if it's a little bit gooey or something like that, like if you do spill soda or something inside here. So get the outside of all those cleaned up, get where they go inside here on those walls, get the inside of these cleaned up, and you should be good to go. Anything that's sticking, you just want to kind of clean everything up. These pads, get them cleaned up, and then we're going to go ahead, and after we do that, we're going to go ahead and try to put this thing back together, and hopefully we can do that. Alright, got a little more cleanup done. I want to show you guys what I've got just from basically going around the edges of these buttons, around the sides of them, just making a circular path with a Q-tip and isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol. That, what I was getting actually off there was all this blue grime, like, you know, looks like it's coming from the blue paint on the inside of the controller, but it's just kind of like a blue colored grime on the outside of those circles, and that's actually what I got off of those. And they feel a lot smoother now, by the way. I've also taken this part here, and you can actually just pull these little buttons off. They just pull right off of these, and this is your mechanism, you know, that's your directional pad right here. So that's kind of what that looks like. Obviously, if you spill something inside there, if that's all sticky, you'll probably want to try to clean that up the best you can. You know, work it down and just clean all the sides the best you can. And hopefully you can get that clean, you know, if you do spill something inside there and it gets inside there. Hopefully that doesn't happen though, because that might be a little bit of a pain to clean up. So basically what we're going to do to put this back together is you can look on these, there's a hole, and it's kind of narrow one way, so it only pops on this one way. So those aren't too terribly difficult. Oops. Those are pretty easy. Alright. Now let's take this piece here, put this back in here, and so we know that the X button right here goes down at the bottom. So as you can see, looking at this now, it's pretty simple. It looks like it's only going to go in one way. There's little notches, and you can see the notches right there. So the only one that goes at the bottom is right there. Simply drop it in. Triangle, we know, is at the top. Again, same thing. It's notched so that you can only put it in one way. So it's impossible to put this in wrong. And this is our circle button, and it's notched a little bit differently here. Let's see here. We know the circle button goes over here. There we go. And this one we can see on the square we only have one fat tab, and fat tab goes in the only fat slot, so drops in just like that. So that's not incredibly hard. For our directional pad, looks like it's really not going to matter on that. Pops in just like that. Now it looks like your circles here, your buttons, are going to be the little rubber pad that has the circles on it. So obviously you'll want to put those in so the button side goes towards the buttons. Okay. And it doesn't look like this actually has to go any particular way. And this is your directional pad. You want the black side pointing out towards you or towards the inside of the controller. Okay. You can kind of feel a little ridge on the outside of this directional pad. You want to make sure you get it so that you can kind of feel the outside of the edge of the pad popping inside of the little ridge there. So that's got that. Alright, this obviously only goes in one way, pops in right there. Alright, let's look at this from this angle here. And those pop in just like that. And basically what you have is you have your fat side like that. You have your other side which has a little notch. That little notch goes right in that. If I can get it in the notch. There we go. So you also have your little black tabs here are going to go inside, just like that. Okay. So that is how that goes together. And then after that, the only thing we have here is our big remaining piece, and that is going to pop back in just like this. Now one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to work this in. This little button here on the bottom down here is going to need to go inside the little notch on the inside there, but that'll just take a little bit of work, and we'll get that inside. Okay guys, it's basically just getting everything lined up. Obviously you want to get your two motors you know, lined up in here, snap those down into place. You know, obviously get your two dual sticks and put those down through the holes that they actually go into. And then just kind of want to show you this. When you actually get these lined up, basically all it is simply pushing down on these motors, and what happens is they actually just pop right into place. And once they pop under those tabs, just like that. Make sure both those tabs are popped in and your motor's in place, and that's not going anywhere. Alright guys, once you get these top parts here aligned correctly, basically they are notched so that there's little sides here that have to go down in notches in the blue casing. Okay, once you get those slid down, they'll slide all the way down, and you'll see that your R1 and L1 buttons work correctly. You push it in and it pushes in on the green part, and you know, once it's in, once you get that down in the groove, you really can't move it from side to side. Same thing over here. Okay, you can see that the button is effectively pushing that little rubber piece, okay, which is telling this circuitry down here what you're doing. Circuitry relays that to the PS3, and so on and so on. And then once you get those in, you snap your two motors in. Your green circuit board should just go ahead and snap down as well, and then we'll go ahead and put our screw in right here and screw that down. Alright guys, and to get these buttons on, these R2 buttons and L2 buttons, you might be tempted to do like I did the first time and try to drop those in the other side of the case like I did there, but that wasn't working too well for me. So don't do that. It looks like it's much easier to go ahead and clip these R2 and R1 buttons, R2 and L2 buttons right on your white plastic part. Okay, so I've got this one done just by looking at it and using common sense here pretty much. I've got it on, and you can test it right here without putting the back on. You should feel tension from your little, and that tension is provided by your little metal spring on the inside, and you should feel just a little bit of tension as you do that, and it also should be, you know, pressing up against that top part of that green rubber piece right there. So what you're going to want to do, okay, if I can show you this, it's kind of hard. It's going to be kind of hard to show you on this. But what you're going to do is take your little spring, okay, and you're going to want to push it up so that one part is up against inside the button, just like that, and the other part is actually going to sit, okay, right here. Okay, let me show you with a screwdriver where it's going to sit. One side's going to be up inside your button, okay, up in there, and then the other part of the spring you want to set right here against that flat part of your white plastic piece right there. It's going to set right there. You're going to want to put your spring up in here, one side of it, and then as you put it on here, you're going to want to set your other side of the spring against here, against that flat side of the plastic, and then basically line it up against your little rubber piece here, and then get that bar right there and snap it on right inside there. Okay, so I'll try to do this with one hand as I hold the camera. Don't know how well it's going to work, and hopefully you haven't bent your springs up too much. Okay, see how I'm kind of setting that up inside there with that one spring going where I told you, and then that bar is going to go inside those little white notches, like I said, and once you do that, it just kind of snaps in. Now once you've snapped it in on there, I have that spring right where I told you I wanted it, and then I should feel a little bit of tension right here on this button. Okay, so that should be how that goes, and we've got everything in there now except our battery. Our battery is a little bit of a pain, but not too bad. Hopefully if you have the original battery, it should just snap into your battery holder here. If it doesn't snap in, I would highly recommend getting a piece of tape and just, you know, put it on the back side of the battery to hold it in place. And then this, you're just going to have to turn. It's only going to go in one way. It's notched so that the notch is on the top. So you just got to work with it and then get it in straight. And then you should just be able to push it in with your thumb. Again, just be careful that you don't break those wires. And you want to make sure that you push that in all the way as well. See, like that right there is not pushed in all the way. And it's a little bit finicky, for sure. Also make sure that you don't get your wires for your battery, you know, wrapped up or around inside there or anything like that. Make sure they're not, you know, messing with your motor. Okay. Hang on. So we're going to require 2 hands to get this little booger in here. Yep. And right there, it just snapped in. So, just require 2 hands, that's all. Now, when you're putting this on, when you're putting your back cover back on, obviously make sure you take your holes and make sure you go ahead and you're going to have to angle it so that you can get it up and under your R2 and your L2 buttons, if you can see that. Okay. Once you get it up under there, it's just a matter of working it until it snaps in place. Snap it in and make sure it's tight all the way around, just like that, if you can see that. And then it's just putting your screws back in, which hopefully you haven't lost. So we'll go ahead and put those screws back in, and we have again 5 screws. We should have 5 screws here somewhere. Aha, there's our 5th one right here. So I'll go ahead and tighten those in. Again, make sure you don't strip them out. You don't need to put tons of force on these, or you will end up stripping those little screws. Alright guys, we got our screws in tight on the bottom, and obviously the first thing you want to do is check and make sure your buttons are properly placed in there and get the right kind of pressure on them, and those feel good. And then you'll want to go ahead and test your controller out, and it looks like just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. You know, it's nice because rubbing alcohol doesn't cost a whole lot. It's like, you know, less than $1 a bottle, and a few Q-tips. Looks like it did the trick, because I don't know if you can remember that feel of the buttons when I pushed them down before, and you could kind of hear a squeak. No longer hear that. It's just the nice sound of the button pushing. Feels like it's brand new, and everything feels like it's a brand new controller from just a little bit of work with some rubbing alcohol and a few Q-tips and taking it apart and putting it back together. So, sound of a brand new controller here. Sound of the controller after we've actually cleaned it up. Good as new. So that can actually save you a lot of money, just spending a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, cleaning up your controller instead of going and buying a brand new one. So hopefully that's helped somebody fix their PS3 controllers that are getting dirty or grimy, or if you spill them or whatever, rather than having to go out and spend the money on a brand new one. So with that, this is Zaxxer99. Be sure you subscribe, ask any questions, comments if you need any help. Certainly put that below. Either me or maybe somebody else can actually help you out or answer your question. You know, and give me a thumbs down if you don't like my video for some reason. Obviously, you know, leave me a comment about why you didn't like it or why it didn't help you. Or if you did like this video and it helped you out, maybe it saved you from having to purchase a new controller, you know, go ahead and give me a thumbs up on my video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. And this is Zaxxer99 signing off.